Hello, hello, and welcome all around the world. We're about 2 minutes before our scheduled kickoff time. Welcome everyone who's joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever that may be. We have a big and very exciting show tonight. We've got a wonderful group of panelists joining us from all over the world, and I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Robb. I'm the CEO and founder of Mass Participation World. Absolutely delighted to be hosting this on behalf of World Athletics tonight. A very big thank you to Alessio and Mark and the rest of the World Athletics team for having me on board, and to our panelists who I'll share a little bit of details on as I go through. But just bear with me while I put the glasses on and have a quick look at my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. So we've got a 2 hour and 15-minute program today. Lots to cram in there. We are already live on Facebook, and we are recording this, and it will be up on the Mass Participation World YouTube channel. So if you do have to drop off before, or if there's any of your friends or colleagues that have missed it, please feel free to point them to those details. Everybody is muted because we're in webinar format, so the way to communicate is in the chat and in the Q&A. I'll have both of those up on the screen that I have over here. Be picking questions for some of the sessions as well, and then going through that during the course of the program. This to me is hugely exciting. The title, as you would be aware, Run Anywhere, the fundamentally human art of all-terrain running and why you should be involved in it. Brings back wonderful memories. I grew up fairly poor on a farm in Zimbabwe, and I used to love getting out running in the forest. It was a great release. I then went to university in South Africa, and against all odds, my university, Natal University, won the South African cross-country championships in Cape Town, running through the middle of a forest there. And it's a memory that sticks with me for a long time. The team, the camaraderie, the experience, and we're going to be hearing a lot about that. We've got a very passionate panel that we'll be talking to. So why don't I just quickly give you a sense of the panel and our speakers. I'll introduce them individually as we get to each panel, but we will start off once I finish with a official welcome from Chris Turner, the Director of Heritage at World Athletics. We then head to a panel for the community, for the world, the social and economic dimensions of cross-country running events, moderated by Andrew Hutchinson, the author of The Complete History of Cross-Country Running. We have Thelma Wright, who's a legend in the sport, and I'll give more of a detail when I get to that panel. Beatrice Ayakuru joining us from Kampala. Thelma joining us from Vancouver. We have Tracy Sunderland joining us from California in San Diego. Once the panel's gone, we then come into a wonderful interview that is pre-recorded, which I did with Kelly McGonigal, the author of The Joy of Movement, and I'll talk a little bit more when I do that introduction of that. And we then hand over to one of the centerpieces of tonight is to talk about the bidding process for the World Cross Country Championships in 2024. Mark Hurst, the bidding manager of World Athletics, will be sharing that. And whilst I'm continuing with that, I'm going to ask Oliver just to pop the first poll into the webinar to get a sense of who's joining us. So we're going to be running, I think, 6 polls during the course of the evening. Love to have your input into those, and we'll be announcing the results of those as we go through. From there, we do a little short interview, which I did with Wayne Larden, the event director of the Bathurst World Cross Country Champs, talking about Bathurst World Cross Country Champs. And we then come back live to Nicholas Rizzo, the fitness research director of Run Repeat, to share some amazing research with us. If you still got the stamina, you're still with us, we've got another great one that follows that is Jason Gerwitz, who's the editor and publisher of Sports Travel. He's going to talk about outdoor sporting events and their impact for travel destinations. And if you've got any breath left and you haven't had enough of me by then, I'll be coming back to do a quick wrap up before handing over to Alessio Punzi to say a farewell and a big thank you from World Athletics. So whilst that panel, that poll is just busy being wrapped up, I think we've a couple of other quick things around a bit of housekeeping. Remember, put your comments in, say hello in the chat. If you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A. We'll do our best to curate those. We are streaming live on Facebook, and the recording will be on YouTube. But if you can't access anything, Mass Participation World, we do a whole range of activities on a weekly basis, the Aid Station podcast, free webinars every fortnight, and a thing called Strength in Numbers every alternative fortnight. If you can't find those details by connecting with me on LinkedIn or Mass Participation World, please just drop me an email, chris@chrisrob.asia. Very happy to help you wherever I can. But I think it really is time to get going. If we could just quickly have the results of those polls, please, Oliver, just to get a sense of who is with us. So we have about a good spattering of people from federations in the majority, 29%, local race organizers. You can see those on the screen. I'll leave you to have a look at those. And I'm going to move on to our official welcome, and a very big welcome tuning in from World Athletics HQ in Monaco, Chris Turner, the Director of Heritage for World Athletics. Welcome, Chris. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And you just remarked on what a wonderful panel, and it's great to be with all these colleagues here today, but also the amazing number of people who have dialed in for today's webinar. And actually, from hearing some of those names, I know for a lot of what I'm about to say is going to already be well known for you all. You're very much cross-country specialists, you know this sport, but for those who don't, I just want to do this intro to put what we're going to be talking about today into some context, into the context of the history of where cross-country came from. As you know, I'm the Director of Heritage, and I'll get the plug in, recently just launched the Museum of World Athletics, and that will have a cross-country room later on this year. And I just want to begin by sharing my screen, always a hazardous business, as we know, in lockdown. So I think you should be seeing me now. Well, you're certainly going to see my screen. You're not going to see me. And I'm now going to do a slideshow from the beginning of this presentation. Here we are. Okay. So cross country, and Alessio in his little intro, which he sent out by email, stole what was the slogan of our cross country running exhibition Aarhus in 2019. And that's the world's first extreme sport. Now, in 2019, Aarhus, Denmark staged the World Cross Country Championships. And also in that year, we were celebrating 200 years, yes, 200 years of the World Cross Country Championships. Most people who are in Aarhus, I don't think knew that this sport was that old, to be quite honest with you. Okay, so we opened an exhibition in Aarhus for a couple of months before the World Cross Country Championships. We're showing the opening here. Next slide, please. There's going to be a rapid succession of these first few. There's our now Director of Competitions, Jakob, who was, of course, the director of the championships in Aarhus. And as you see, there's one of the banners behind him, Mud Sweat, and it's world's first extreme sport. Yeah, move on to the next one. Just some of the cabinets which we had on display and some of the artifacts. And next slide, please. Paul Turgat and our president, Sebastian Coe. Paul very kindly donated one of his World Cross Country winning gold medal vests to us. And next slide, please. And now we have an array of probably pretty unique of 21 World Cross Country golds on show. From left to right, Turgat with 5 in his hand, Jennings with 2, Radcliffe with 2, Sargent with 2, Treacy 2, Tulu 3, and Jack Weitz holding Greta's 5 gold medals. And this was at our exhibition the night before the championship began. Next slide, please. So it came, as I said, it came as quite a surprise to a lot of people in Aarhus that the discipline of cross-country running was 200 years old. Now, the first reference to the discipline, we can now call it, of cross-country, was originated in a paper chase game run across countryside And that's found in the documents of the English Public School of Shrewsbury. Now, it's a boarding school. Well, don't move the slides yet. We don't want to spoil the fun. A boarding school set in beautiful open countryside of Shropshire. The boys of Royal Shrewsbury School invented the sport of cross-country running. They simply wanted to exercise in the open air, away from the confines of the school gates, and knowing most schoolboys probably out of the eyes of their schoolmasters. Next slide, please. The name of hare and hounds, or later developed in some schools, fox and hounds, was adopted from the terminology of the actual hunting with dogs. The next slide, please. And basically the boys laid a paper trail where the hares and they were the hares, and the rest of the boys who followed their route were the pack of hounds. Now, when they reached the end of the trail, all the boys turned around and raced back to the school. Those runs were timed and recorded in hound books. And that's where we have the beginning of cross-country running, and that's where it's first documented. Can we have another slide, please? The boys literally ran up and down hill. They forded rivers. They ran through woods. The courses were as extreme as any you'll find today in a Tough Mudder or similar off-piste running event. This sport took runners anywhere and everywhere. Next slide, please. That's a nice shot from the 1924 Olympic Games in Paris. And another shot, another slide, please. And we'll hold on that for a moment. That's the 1964 Olympic Games. And yes, cross-country was in it because, of course, modern pentathlon had a cross-country element. So yeah, these boys were from a privileged elite. But this game, this hare and hounds, first opened up and established what would later become public rights of way across the countryside. Their legacy is not just in the Harrier clubs today. I was a member of Enfield Harriers in North London, but the Rambler and walking associations around the world, and the Right to Roam campaigns of the modern day. Now, cross-country running quickly sprang to life. Universities were next after the schools to take up the game. Then the first adult Harrier clubs were formed in the UK and USA, and national championships were staged. The International Cross-Country Championships were founded in 1903, and by the middle of the 20th century, cross-country running was widely practiced worldwide. Can we have another slide, please? So yes, as the slide says, it'd gone global. Next slide, please. And over the course of the next couple of decades, the expansion was so rapid that the IAAF took over management of the international, and it was renamed, as we all know, the World Cross Country Championship. Next slide, please. Cross country has never been so big and was never so popular, but in that success was born the seeds of its own fall. And I do not say fall lightly, by the way. With the need to accommodate TV broadcast of a global nature, and in turn to attract corporate sponsorship, there was a gradual move to more contained filmable loop courses and to horse racing tracks, where much of the infrastructure needed was already on hand. Now, quite suddenly, the free-spirited pastime of hare and hounds found itself not run across country freely, but enclosed behind gates and fencing. Cross-country had effectively been neutered. Watching track athletes run around flat grass hippodromes was about as far removed from the original idea of a group of 19th century schoolboys as you could imagine. Next slide, please. Now, I remember about 20 years ago at a World Cross Country Championships, sat on a media tribune, chatting to a friend and colleague. Many of you will know, he's now the editor of Inside the Games, Duncan Mackay, and he was then the athletic correspondent for The Guardian. Why was Duncan there at the championships, I asked. There didn't seem to be much hope of a British team, let alone a medal placing. And his response was, as Duncan always is, was very forthright. The Guardian will always attend the World Cross Country. It's a global event. Now, I was then the editor of the IAAF website, and only a few years later, I found myself sitting on the media tribune at the World Cross Country Championships, with virtually no international media in attendance. Duncan was absolutely right. The World Cross Country Championships was a global event. The trouble was that the spectacle had gone. Much of its life had been sucked out of it. In today's world where runners are looking for that extra challenge, that extra edge, it's not too late for cross-country running to prosper again. Cross-country has all the ingredients to fulfill its true destiny and become a mass participation sport. We simply need to begin at the beginning and return cross-country to its roots as the world's first extreme sport. Next slide, please. The mud in Ostend in 2001 reinforced cross-country's natural spectacle. Next slide, please. Mombasa in 2007 was perhaps too brutal. If you were there, I promise you it was. And Aarhus, next slide, please. In 2019, however, landed perfectly and has signaled the way forward. If you could go to my final slide, please. Thank you. That was quite a slope that Jakob constructed within the course at the heart of Aarhus. He didn't have to construct it because it's actually up the roof of a museum in the center of the course. Now, the mixing of World Masters races with the World Cross Country Championships next year in Bathurst will take the rebirth another step forward. And here we are today to discuss how we bring cross country back to its roots and back to the prominence and respect that it deserves. Thank you, everybody. Last slide, the normal one, which is the thank you. And now let's savor some spectacular World Cross Country history on video. Over to you, Oliver.
Going to the arms, Albertina Diaz in third, but it's going to be win number 3 at home for Lynn Jennings of the United States.
Kenenisa Bekele wins a record-breaking 6th World Cross Country title. Gold for Ethiopia, a superb performance from him.
And O'Sullivan is going to take this world title. Brilliant run. She is the world champion. A great and unique double in these World Cross Country Championships. Sonia O'Sullivan is champion of the world for the second time. 2:59.
And Turgon coming home to win the World Cross Country Championship for the 5th time in succession. And that is an all-time record.
Jeffrey Cameron is once again the world champion. Cameron is a man who just never knows when he's beaten. One of the greatest distance runners women's athletics has ever seen. Tirunesh Dibaba wins the World Cross Country title here in Edinburgh.
Paula Radcliffe becomes champion of the world for the 2nd time.
But there's the girl heading for glory, Gewitz of Norway. Crossing the line, the victory for Norway, a magnificent victory and a surprise one.
3rd World Cross Country title. Tulu takes it.
Wami of Ethiopia takes the gold. But Scar comes away to defended world title. Annette Sarjon becomes the cross-country champion of the world.
It's Edith Masai of Kenya who comes through to win the women's 4K cross-country title for the 3rd successive year.
Tracy is there in the lead, winning the World International Cross-Country Championship and making history for Irish athletics.
Lorenzo Nessi, a journalist I know very well from Sweden, just asked a question in the chat. Are you sure you want to go back to the roots? By the roots, I mean a free-flowing, open event where you really are in the countryside. That's the roots of cross-country running. The format around it is absolutely open for debate. Over to you. Thank you very much, Chris.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you for that, and some really inspiring footage there. And as I said at the top of the show, you know, growing up on a farm in Zimbabwe and winning a South African cross-country championship in the forests in Cape Town totally resonate with what you're talking about. Let's move on to our next segment, which is going to be full of passion and interest and excitement. We have a panel for the community, for the world, the social and economic dimensions of cross-country running events. It's going to be moderated by Andrew Hutchinson, the author of The Complete History of Cross-Country Running. And he's going to be joined by a legend of cross-country and a very passionate lady, Thelma Wright, an Athletics Canada Hall of Famer, an Olympian, a cross-country medalist, a teacher, a coach, and been to 38 World Cross-Country Championships, she was telling us on the planning call yesterday, and sat on the IAAF cross-country committee for 12 years. Welcome to Andrew and Thelma. If you can please, their panel, unmute yourselves and say a quick hello there as I introduce you, and I'll keep moving in the interests of time. Joining us from Kampala in Uganda, Beatrice Ayakuno, General Secretary, Ugandan Athletics Federation, organizer of the World Cross Country Championships in Kampala in 2017, and then heading all the way back across to the east coast of North America. As I mentioned, Thelma in Vancouver, Tracy Sunderland in San Diego, co-founder of Rock and Roll Marathon, and on the organizing committee of the World Cross Country Championships in 1984. A big welcome to all of our panelists, and I'll hand it over to you, Andrew, for what I'm sure is going to be an exciting and stimulating about 30-minute conversation. We'll talk for about 25 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A. So start popping your questions in the Q&A for us to, collate for you. Over to you, Andrew, and the panel.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome the world to what is going to be an interesting discussion about the past, present, and future of cross-country running. As Chris Turner mentioned here, we're dealing with an attribute of athletics that is often overlooked in today's world for reasons that we will talk about hopefully now, and provide some insight into how we can bring it back into the spotlight for the future. Just a quick introduction about me. My research has led me around the world, spent a year in Europe interviewing and working alongside some really spectacular folks, past and present Olympians, officials, and other researchers of the same kind who know athletics deeply. I feel as though cross-country is kind of one of those special events that features not only with running and athletics, but also in other ways, and expands globally to reach every market. As far as I understand it, cross-country, either as a participant, as a fan, as a spectator, it has all of the advantages and none of the drawbacks of athletics. It can be done over any terrain, as we saw before, over obscure distances, or in any weather. It is fundamentally simple, without many restrictions or difficult rules, and individually can be done essentially by any person with a wide range of ages and abilities, inexpensive to set up, and offers numerous opportunities for media exposure and spectator viewership. The two most compelling qualities of the sport itself, of course, that are rare within the sport of athletics, have to do with the team element, which exists within the same event. All competitors feature for their team within the same race. And of course, the accessibility of the sport, not only for participants who are all competing in the same race at the same time, over the same terrain and the same weather, but also allows and invites spectators to be right up against the action, so should they so choose. What makes it exciting from the get-go from a media standpoint and a spectator standpoint, of course, is that you have the world's best athletes from short distances, as the 800-meter runners or milers might contend, all the way up to marathoners and steeplechase runners who are in the same event on the same plane at the same time. And it can really be held in under any circumstances in conjunction with other events. Of course, lends itself often to having other festival elements in addition to the cross-country running itself, and has such wide range applications as just looking back in the last couple of iterations of the World Cross Country Championships. And in Kampala, it was held on a parade ground. In Denmark, they ran up the roof of a museum. The Pan Am Cross Country Cup, which was featured a year ago in British Columbia, was held at a resort, at a golf course, quite beautiful. And of course, the upcoming World Championships will be held at a motorsport course in Australia. So the wide range of applications of the sport lends itself wonderfully to athletics, and there really are no limitations. And as featured as the original extreme sport, there is a wide range of ages and audience members in the world who would find that this is a sport that they really have access to and can feel at home with. So I will now moderate a session here. We've got three really well-known individuals, brilliant individuals, and I open up the floor really to the question first, what is the sport missing, and what can we do to really improve the status of cross country globally, locally, wherever it may be?
Well, I guess I'll jump in. I think, unfortunately, one of the things we're missing is that passion the athletes used to have to just purely want to go out and run. And what Chris said, that the need for, they're looking for that extreme challenge. They want to prove that they like that toughness. I think the athletes do, but I think along the way, not only money has come into it and running with your team, we've lost that sense of doing it for the rest of the gang. And anyway, I'll let somebody else say what they think.
Ladies first.
Yep. Go ahead, Beatrice.
Yes, thank you. And I think I agree with Thelma from the athlete's back point of view. Now, I also bring what is missing from the federation point of view. And I think for many federations, the cross country seems not to be one of the key sports that they look forward to. They think that the cross country is only for mid and long distance athletes. No, that's not the case. The cross country in my country, Uganda, the field athletes can also be able to run in cross country because it provides variety of events from 2 kilometers. A thrower can be able to run 2 kilometers. A jumper can be able to run 2 kilometers. So it's that variety that our member federations need to understand and appreciate, that it should not only be the middle and long distance athletes who run in cross country. Cross country running is for all the sport. The sport of athletics is where the cross country provides the foundation for the sport of athletics. So whether you're a thrower, whether you're a jumper, whether you're a middle distance athlete, still you can be able to run in cross country.
We have to take the past and incorporate it into the present and look to the future. It's wonderful. Boy, that was some great video. That's some great history. Brings smiles to your face. And yes, when we put on the championships in New York, and I say we, I was part of a team, it was led by Fred Lebo, the impresario of the New York Roadrunners Club, the first director of the New York City Marathon. And anybody in the sport right now owes him a great debt of gratitude, if not their jobs, to what he started. But when we brought the championships to New York, we could have put it on at Van Cortlandt Park, which is one of the more iconic and famous cross-country courses, certainly then in the world. But it was in the Bronx, and most of the action took place off in the hills, and it was out of sight. And he wanted to take the sport to the people. And how do we do that in that era? Today, we could put on cameras and a big video board off in the hills, and maybe we can do that. But back then, let's put it on the newest sports palace in New York City, the Meadowlands Racetrack. And, you could watch it, and great public transportation, great parking, exciting TV, amenities. You could watch the race with a drink in your hand and a nice plush seat. And we went and built hills, some wood, some dirt. The place let us do that. That was the way he took it to the people then, and made it center stage. And back then, as Beatrice and Thelma just spoke, every athlete, it was the one time of the year that every world-class distance runner showed up. Every team was there, milers to marathoners. It was the jewel of distance running, period.
Yeah, sorry, Tracy. Yeah.
Andrew, I just wanted to say, oh, never mind. Carry on.
Go.
I just wanted to go back to what Andrew asked about what's missing. And Beatrice talked about the federations. And I think big time for sure in Canada is when you're not funded, they won't fund athletes that are purely looking for cross country or wanting to go to the World Cross Country Championships, because cross country isn't an Olympic event, quote unquote. And so federations now are basing a lot of their ability to support things on the funding they get, I think, and the funding for the athletes directly then becomes, if you're not already an elite athlete, you won't get the funding. And yet we have proven, and Beatrice, I know she will support me on this, that our best athletes started at cross country and they get to Olympic championships. And you look back, and I've got a record of all our Canadians that right from 1960 to now that have competed at cross country first and ended up on our Olympic and world teams and our top athletes. So that's a big thing for me, that we don't support cross country, but cross country, as Beatrice said, is our sport. It is the roots of our sport.
Well, I was going to add to it that that's the private sector, and if we learn from where we're at and understanding whether it was Tough Mudder or road running in the beginning as a destination marketing, as we can create marvelous venues in every city. They did it in Aarhus, San Diego. We put on a national championships for the last 10 years, and we didn't put it on a course where the high school nationals were. We went and put it on the Mission Bay, where you had one picture. Everybody knows it's San Diego. It's this iconic view. People will remember Aarhus forever. But if we take the road race mentality of both destination marketing and economic impact, particularly with mass races, no, we combine it with your core piece about athletics and cross country being critical, and it being the largest sport, at least in the United States, in high school. No, we got great possibilities to combine the best of road racing, the best of destination marketing right now.
I think what's compelling about what Tracy and Thelma and Beatrice all said is that we have an opportunity here to position cross country as a centerpiece for a celebration of running, because it does bring all those attributes of the sport together. And it really is about mass participation, and has a wonderful opportunity for the media to cover it, because it is not on an oval, not done always in the stadium, and we're trying to move back to that more natural terrain. But my question for Beatrice is that in Kampala in 2017, we saw a wonderful turnout from the community. It was really just a high energy, really wonderful display of attendance. What was a difference there that you felt made the masses come out to cross country and brought that energy?
Message out there. It's cross country is in many communities. It's a new thing. It's something that don't always see. In my country, I think when we hosted the World Cross Country Championships, and I think one of the things was to see I can say the drumming before the event. A lot of publicity went out there, seeing the foreign countries coming to our country, and of course we are located within the cross country running nations. We have our neighbors Kenya, we have Ethiopia. So having a lot of these, seeing the local population, seeing the other spectators coming from the neighboring countries, I think kind of inspired the local citizens of Kampala to come and watch the cross country. Of course, there's one thing about the cross country. I think you can host it anywhere. Cross country for us, you don't need to be within a stadium or within a road. Anywhere you want to have your cross country, you can have it. that's why we really need to see the aspect how cross country can be a key sport for all our athletics to market it, because you can organize a cross country away from the city as long as you have the facilities. And many of the federations do not have maybe standard stadium, but they can easily organize a cross country because it's an off-road, easy to organize. So really for us to have cross country here with a big population, I think that's one of the great things that one could say as a country. Yes, we had to market, reach out, and I can say, really, if we did a lot, we learned some few things, but if we really went on to market the sport for 1 month, we'll have got much more than the number we got. But of course, the presence of our excellence, the president at the venue also has some restrictions. So really, I can say it's a sport that we can easily market to people. People are willing to watch it.
Excellent point. And that attachment that the community builds with the runners that come in. Thelma, what has been your experience when you have elites and the community all together? Do you have any ideas about what we can do to kind of bridge that gap?
Well, I think it's really hard. I'm seeing some questions over on the side there that some of the attendees are asking us about questions about, we need more statistics and we need to have more accurate this and that. And I think that that's not what cross country is. Cross country, as everybody has said, it can be everywhere, anywhere. And the beauty of cross country is I don't know if you've been watching March Madness on TV, the NCAA basketball, but some of you obviously probably don't. But to me, whether it's that team aspect, that sense of belonging and getting involved. And so when we ran in Mombasa and when we ran in Kampala, because the African nations love to run, the Kenyans and the Ugandan crowds were just amazing, and they were right there. And it used to, and the same in Ireland and in Scotland and in Belgium and in all the places I've gone to watch the World Cross Country, you can see that the passion comes from the people around. And if you can get spectators involved by allowing them to also be on that course, not just standing and watching, but also racing. And even going back, I remember, oh gosh, as one of the team coaches actually running in all the, I would still enter all the mass participation races. And I think getting involved and actually doing the event and then watching athletes do it, and even perhaps my idea of having, when we've now added this mixed relay that's supposed to make it more exciting, which when there's only 10 runners on a course, I don't find that exciting. But if you put all of our spectators and said, if you want to be running also and have a mixed relay, then what's wrong with having a start where the elites would actually be on the same course at the same time? They may have a separate start to give them a clear start, but the loops would start to be, they'd be lapping. I just have these exciting visions of everybody running, and all of a sudden this fast Kenyan comes whipping by them, or, the top Canadian, and they're this young Canadian young kid running, or it could be a master's athlete, and realizing how fast these other runners are going by them. Anyway, I have all these ideas about that. But the big thing I wanted to say is that that one of the panelists asked about whether we need more statistics and whatever. Remember, cross country isn't about time. It's about running against everybody else and against the course you're on, whether it's the weather, the terrain, the mud, the toughness, and being able to pull yourself through no matter what. And I don't think we want to have a course that is exactly 10K or is exactly a 2K loop where we're giving splits, because it's more a visual thing and it's more a mental thing. And if you know that for your team, you are scoring, even if you're coming 71st or 150th, if you're the last scorer for your team, it matters how many people you pass and where you are. And that's the beauty of the whole thing. So I took it like that spectators need to be involved, and they'll be involved if we allow them to experience it right up close, personal, either spectating or competing.
I think it brings in an interesting perspective, because you would have athletes who would see the value of the sport and reaching back into the community where the event is being held, and then you would have also a wonderful incentive for the community to take part, especially local schools or colleges and universities. It opens the door for a lot of interesting competitive opportunities.
Well, that's the thing in North America, isn't it? We have every little elementary school every week in our city. They run cross country all fall, and the high schools and the colleges, and just watching the NCAA cross country finals. Like it's the team. It's not about who won. It's what school or what club won. And if we've got every little child running, and as Beatrice says, whether you want to be a high jumper or a sprinter or a thrower, when you're 7 or 8 years old, you just want to be on the team. So you're doing it for the team, and then you develop and you find out what you're talented at. I was going to be a high jumper, but at 5 foot tall, that didn't work.
We much prefer you as a cross-country enthusiast, Thelma. Tracy, I was going to open the floor to you.
Well, you asked about the connection of athletes, and that's our biggest problem, today. Years ago, when I first involved, before you guys were born, everybody knew who Frank or Joni or Billy or Jim was, Mary was, just by first names. We were a major sport. Now it is our biggest job in all elements of our sport to connect the elite athletes, the world's best, to the participants, to every other phase of the event. Now, in road racing, theoretically, we have the easiest opportunity, and in cross country, if everybody's running together, everybody's doing the same thing. It's easy to compare. It's not just watching from a seat in a stadium. But we do have to find ways to take cross country to the people. It has to be accessible, venue-wise. It has to be exciting. And it can be big time deal. You mentioned the Final Four, you mentioned the March Madness. Well, let's go to Indiana, the home of where Larry Bird went to school, and Terre Haute, Indiana has essentially made cross country a pillar of their economic development there. These two guys created a cross country course out of an old mine and a landfill, and every week of the year, the fall, it is a home of multiple high school, college, open invitational cross-country events. Is virtually every year there's a national championship. You've got an incredibly cheap venue with everything from starting things to television towers to the like. Yes, it can be done if somebody has a vision, and they will come when somebody builds it. It's not just baseball.
I'm gonna just interject real fast. We've got about 5 minutes left, and then we'll open up.
Oh my God! Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're doing great. My building on that note real quick is to say a lot of the criticism that exists currently about elites participating is that the incentive for them to do it is low within the sport, and I think that by allowing them to gain a little bit of prestige either through a team format or a point format, or perhaps our dream, of course, to get it back into the Olympic Games either summer or winter, and interjecting a little bit of opportunity there, really comes back to the venues itself, the places that are willing to host it and the federations that support it, so that these athletes will have the biggest crowds, the biggest fields of competition, so that they are challenged and feel as though it's worth participating in, and offering those opportunities. Building again on Thelma's point as well, interceding with colleges and universities and local schools. There was a year ago a wonderful event in Vancouver, Victoria Island in British Columbia, where they hosted the Pan Am Cross Country Cup. And it was just a phenomenal day of cross country celebration. We saw a similar turnout in Aarhus. And I think that the market, as Beatrice was mentioning, if you market the sport locally, they will come. People will show up. And we have such wonderful gems across the world in terms of Terre Haute being a location that people would go to. There are so many opportunities for the sport to reach the masses. I feel like it's really just, where do we begin and where do we put our best energies? With the last couple minutes here, any last words, Thelma, or any of you for what we might want to share before the questions hit?
Well, I think that if there's a passionate group of people that want to put on an event, that to want to host a cross country, they can do it. And I think each place in the world, having been since the 1970s to so many different places and see so many unique different things, don't be stuck by where you are. Just believe in what you have and what you can offer, and create an atmosphere based on what your community can find from it. And really, it is important to engage the little kids and the old folks like me, because we will come and we will enjoy. And that's my only thing. And just, I know we have athletes that are uniquely cross-country athletes too. I have good examples of athletes that never really made it to the Olympics or never became in the top 10 in the world, but they still could be the top 10 in the world cross country. And then we have the opposite, where we have athletes that ran 10, 15 times world cross country, never got a medal, but they end up in the top in the world at world championships or Olympics. So it is for everybody.
Excellent. And as a time point, I just noticed here, Lorenzo mentioned that we're having a bit of a North American perspective, and that cross country is no longer something that students do regularly in Europe. And yet they have such a wonderful turnout for their regional European championships that happen annually, that, it's hard to say that, sure, at a grassroots level, the sport can always find ways of improving and proliferating. And of course, is the beginning stages of where most students begin to run. But that there do exist wonderful venues and wonderful energy at these European events. I don't believe for a minute that cross country is dying for the masses out there. I believe that there's opportunity in all parts of the world for more exposure for the sport. But I'm going to hand over the reins to Chris Robb here. And
if I could just say one last thing, following up what you just said and what we've all said, with this current interest in off-road stuff and in Tough Mudders and all the extreme elements, which is cross country. And if we use the tried and true road racing model of selling economic impact, running tourism, destination marketing, there isn't a city in the world which can't duplicate what they did in Kampala, what they did in Aarhus, what they're doing in Terre Haute, what we're trying to do in San Diego, what we did in New York years ago. It makes no difference if you're in an urban area, a beach town, or a desert. You can make a beautiful, unique, iconic cross-country course. Every city has a signature, and there are no limits except your imagination. This thing, it's just there to be happening if somebody just wants to do it. It's simple, and it's cheap.
That's a great thing to come in on. I think some great discussion. Thank you to the panel. There's no limit but your imagination. Great point to wrap that up with, I think, and lots of discussion that could go on for ages, but we've obviously got to keep the program moving forward. So I'm going to take one question which has been in the Q&A. There's been a lot of things going on in the chat, but I think those of you that are watching, you can access the chat and have a look at those. They've been moving pretty fast, so I haven't been able to see all of them. Quite a lot of them have been comments rather than questions, but we're going to pick up one that's been sitting here from a while from Irene McGuire. Cross country is set in the outdoor natural world. Can you comment on how the new World Athletics sustainability strategy relates to the operation of this sport? Any new expectations as we care for our planet to reach 2030 and 2050 carbon reduction goals? Thank you. Who would like to tackle that one?
I'll do a quick intro because I know Tracy and Thelma that they're all kind of in tune with this. I believe personally that cross country offers the ideal model to align with sustainability goals because it is a natural sport, right? Anywhere in the world you can do this, and it invites the opportunity to do it sustainably. Instead of building a massive stadium, ideas of FIFA currently come to mind. We can host this practically anywhere for very little cost and very little impact on the environment.
Thanks.
The next day, you'd never know that the cross country had happened other than the mud that's left behind. And it doesn't take much to put together and to take apart.
Thank you, Thelma. Thanks, folks. We're pretty much out of time, but I'd like you to just join me with a virtual round of applause for a passionate and engaging panel. A very big thank you to Andrew for moderating, Thelma, Beatrice, and Tracy for joining us from different corners of the world for the great insights, and enjoy the rest of your day for those of you that are starting early on the East Coast of North America, and rest well, Beatrice, when it's getting to your time of the day. Thank you so much. And with that, folks, we'll move on, and we're going to keep putting some of the polls in here. We've had the results of our third poll, which you can see, and we'll be popping another one up in a little while. But another fascinating segment, I had the absolute pleasure a couple of days ago of doing a pre-recorded interview with Kelly McGonigal, who is the author of The Joy of Movement, How Exercise Helps Us Find Happiness, Hope, Connection, and Courage. I invite you to sit back for about 20 minutes or so to listen to my interview with Kelly. Hi, Kelly. So wonderful to see you. Thank you for making the time, and delighted that you've brought a special guest, Moo, to come and join the interview. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, congratulations on the book. We've only got 20 minutes, so I'm sure we could talk for a couple of hours on all that you've covered. But why don't we start, please, with people talk about the runner's high, and some people say, it's just a bit of marketing hype. Tell us about the runner's high and what you've discovered and what you can share, please.
Yeah, well, let's start with how people describe it. So it begins with this kind of a peace of mind, a quieting of the mind, and then an ease, a greater ease of movement, a sense of power, confidence, a sense of optimism and hope. And even you'll often hear runners describe feeling loving and connected to everyone and everything. And so what could possibly be going on in the body and the brain that would make you feel powerful, hopeful, faster, more confident, and more loving? And it turns out that it's caused by a really reliable change in brain chemistry that kicks in once you've been in continuous motion for about 20 minutes. And it's not only the endorphin rush that so many people have heard about. The runner's high is primarily driven by endocannabinoids, which are the brain chemicals that cannabis mimics. But when you're running and endocannabinoid levels naturally increase, that's what produces this powerful sense of kind of inner peace, empowerment, and connection to others. And the thing that I find so fascinating about the runner's high is it's like the perfect neurobiological change to make you a better version of yourself. And I think that's why so many people go for a run and then they feel like they can take on the world. Or, so many people have told me that their spouses or their partners will send them out for a run because they want to interact with the person who has just been on a run. And so, one way to think about the runner's high is it's not just like a reward you get for running in that it makes you feel good, but it actually is why running can make you a better version of yourself. And it lasts for hours, by the way. So even though you might only feel that like peak high during the run or just after the run, we know that those brain changes, they last and they create this upward spiral so that people often report feeling less stressed, getting more things done, having better interactions with other people for hours after a run.
Well, that's fantastic. And I'm guessing, we bulk of the people on this call are from the running fraternity, but I guess it works same for cycling. Obviously, a triathlon's got a running element to it, but exercise in general.
Yeah, and I actually call it a persistence high because anything that keeps you in motion, that gets your heart rate up, causes you to breathe more deeply, you're using your muscles, you're using your body to engage with life, it can all give you the high. It just turns out that running is really, really effective at giving you that high.
Wow, that's great. And so then, you spoke about it kicks in after 20 minutes. Is it important to have that consistency? I mean, do you get it pretty much every time you run? The more you run, the more chance you have of getting the runner's high, Kelly?
Yeah, so first of all, there are a few things you can do if you want to get the high a little bit faster. So for example, listening to music early in a run can actually kickstart the process, release more endorphins and dopamine and adrenaline so that you can start to feel some of that high sooner. But the thing that's really interesting is that the more you run or the more you exercise, your brain actually learns how to more reliably produce that high. And part of that's because exercise and running in particular has this interesting effect on your brain where it strengthens your reward system. And that includes endocannabinoids and endorphins, all the brain chemicals that make you feel good and that help you be motivated. That exercise actually strengthens that system so that it kicks in sooner, you can sustain it longer, and you get a sort of a bigger jolt of joy or hope or pride from anything that would naturally trigger that system. And part of that includes the runner's high. So it actually seems to take about 6 weeks of regular training for people to see these structural changes in the brain that make it easier not only to get a runner's high, but to experience more joy, more pleasure, more hope, more motivation in everyday life. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that running is such a powerful antidepressant and so good for our mental health, because it changes the brain in this way.
That's fantastic. So 6 weeks getting out there and doing it consistently. You mentioned hope, and I think right now people all over the world are looking for hope. It's, you know, we hope when's it going to finish and so on. I mean, the race, the idea of being part of a race as a signal of hope. Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so when psychologists define hope, they often describe it as having a goal that's meaningful to you, that you believe you can take steps toward, that you can make progress toward. And we know that training for an event, having a race in mind, is actually one of the most powerful ways to create a sense of hope, because it's such a concrete thing that you can work toward. Your effort can contribute. You can recruit allies and support. You know, if you're the kind of person who likes to do it not alone, but with others, there are often so many structures in place to have that experience. And it's really a way of imagining a positive future. And some people might scoff at that and think, well, if you're not a professional athlete, it's just a race, what does it matter? But we know that when people are training for an event, even if it's not a super competitive event, that it not only produces a sense of hope and confidence and agency toward that specific event, but it generalizes to any challenge that you're facing in life, as well as your ability to imagine a positive future in every area of your life. And so, in a way, it's strengthening your capacity for hope. But it's also, it's such a great thing to experience on its own as well. I mean, it's wonderful when there's something you can do that's like a training ground for hope that also in and of itself can provide so much pleasure and pride.
I love that, and you mentioned there whether it's a competitive event or not, and my sense is that more and more people these days are participating in an event to be part of a community. It's no longer really about that personal best every time. It's no longer about, when in the 70s and 80s, I think it was much more competitive. And I know we've got Run Repeat on the program, and some of the things they're going to be talking about and they have spoken about is, the bigger cohort of runners globally is getting a bit slower, but my sense is that that's because they're enjoying it, they're having fun. Can we speak to that kind of social contract beyond just, I'm an individual, I'm going out and doing an event? What does it mean to the community? You mentioned people coming along and doing it. Some people engage friends and supporters to come with them, but that whole social contract that comes around it, please.
I mean, so one way to understand it is that humans have always needed to move together to survive and to thrive. Humans need to cooperate. And a race or an event is basically a way to rehearse our fundamental human interdependence. And we know that when you move with other people, so you feel like you're part of a pack, you're all headed in the same direction, even if there's an element of competition in there, your brain interprets that as being a part of something bigger than yourself. There are all sorts of words that people use to describe it. There's muscular bonding and we agency, collective joy, but we know that we are wired to experience a massive endorphin rush when we move with other people, a sense of being connected, and a sense of collective strength. And again, what could be a better way to experience that than, like I said, moving forward together? And so many people experience that when they are part of the race. But also, what I've heard from so many people who engage in races is also that powerful ability to support other runners and to receive help from other runners, whether it's getting water at an aid station or encouraging someone who's slowing down a little bit and telling them that they can do it. there's something about a race that allows you to really lean into what it means to be a part of a collective effort, where sometimes you're the one who needs that extra help and encouragement, and sometimes you're the one that has something to offer. And so I wouldn't underestimate the role that aspect of events play in why people feel this tremendous sense of togetherness. Because of course, that's what we need to do for all sorts of crises and challenges in life. We need to learn how to be open to the support that's available to us, and also tap into our inner strength to keep going and look for how we might be able to reach out and help others.
I love that. So tapping into that support that's available, being vulnerable, I guess, and looking at it goes, I guess, beyond the track as well as those volunteers. You mentioned the aid station, and you were kind of talking about one runner stopping and giving aid to another, but the whole, the community that comes together to support that event, from the spectators to the volunteers. I did an interview at my Mass Participation World Conference last year, and we replayed that a couple of weeks ago at one of these World Athletics webinars. And it was Peter Burrow, who's a world-renowned neuroscientist and behavioral economic expert. And Peter's comment, which I felt so poignant, and many people said it resonated with them. He said, being a runner, participating in mass participation is at the very core of what it means to be human. And I guess that's been reflected in what you've just said there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's not only the runners, it's also the volunteers, and it's even, the spectators who get to observe so many different human strengths that people demonstrate in a race. Even just standing on the sidelines, getting to cheer people on. We know that witnessing what runners bring to an event, that is contagious and it is elevating. That when you see a runner who's exhausted and someone cheers them on, and like they kick in that extra bit and they push a little bit harder, people feel uplifted when they witness that. They feel inspired by seeing this side of what it means to be human. We love seeing other people cheer strangers on, and we can celebrate seeing that part of human nature. That the part of us who's just rooting for everyone to finish, not necessarily for the fastest person and only sort of caring about their success. There's just so much good to witness in races. And I think that it's wonderful to be able to play that role. Some races you run, some races you volunteer, and some races you should just go and cheer.
That's wonderful. Some of my most inspiring sporting moments, I grew up in Zimbabwe and South Africa, and I used to be involved in the world famous Comrades Marathon, 90 kilometers. And, some of my most inspiring, and I've been so lucky to have had many inspiring sporting moments, was, literally seeing people crawl the last 200 meters after 90 kilometers to get over that line, that human tenacity, and complete strange runners picking them up and carrying them over the finish line, and the crowd surging them on. And I guess that presents an opportunity maybe to segue into the challenge. So, the bulk of this, our topic tonight for this webinar with World Athletics is Run Anywhere. And we've got to focus on cross-country running, trail running, all the off-road elements of it, running with nature, and we'll get to that in a moment. But, cross-country is tough. You got to watch where you're putting every foot, or whether it be trail running and so on. But so that challenge of overcoming the adversity of a challenging course, maybe through mud, where you really got to look at where you're putting your feet. How does that work in a psychological and mental sense? And then how does that kind of transcend into everyday life, Kelly? How does that make people more resilient in terms of overcoming more of a challenging event? Not necessarily from the perspective of a personal best or running the fastest time, but the fact that they've overcome something more challenged than maybe, not for one moment saying a marathon on a flat street's not challenging, but the extra challenges that cross-country brings to the table.
Yeah, so you said it so beautifully. I have an identical twin sister, and she's a competitive runner. And she said to me once that her favorite part of a run is the part that's horrible. And I laughed, and she said, well, it's because in that moment when it's really horrible, you literally sense your own strength and your toughness. and you have this inner conviction that this is tough and I am tough and I'm the kind of person who can do this. And, you know, all movement can do this, but when you're talking about trail running or, you know, really challenging races, that you're getting literal physical feedback from your body that says who you are is tough, who you are is capable, who you are is someone who can adapt and push through and persevere and figure things out and put one foot forward even when, you know, every cell in your body is screaming to stop. Once you have that knowledge, that embodied knowledge of your own strength, when other challenges come up in life, it kicks in. That it's a physical memory that you are someone who can overcome obstacles, that you can do things that other people can't or other people won't. That when part of you wants to give up, you already know there's a part of you who will choose to keep going when it matters, and that you can trust that part of yourself. And you know, I've spoken to so many people for whom the experience of running, particularly really hard runs, changed the way that they viewed themselves dramatically, including helping people overcome experiences in their own life, including grief and depression and addiction, that felt like they were really challenges that are so hard to overcome. And yet the experience of running gave them a visceral, concrete knowledge that they can overcome. And so, you know, it's another reason to embrace the challenging parts.
Yeah, there was a runner that I used to work with and train with sometimes in Australia, Tiny Ruckle. She was Canadian. She came from Vancouver Island. She participated in a number of Commonwealth Games in the marathon, and she had this mantra: the further I go, the stronger I get. The further I go, the stronger I get. And when it was getting tough for her, she would just repeat that. And you saw the things that she achieved, not only running, but in life as well.
You know, there's actually, that actually reminded me, as you mentioned a mantra. One of the things when I was researching my book, you know, I came across a lot of studies that interviewed people who did absolutely incredible athletic events, like multiple Ironman triathlons within 1 week, and interviewing them to find out, like, how are people getting through this? And what was so interesting is people are using the same coping strategies that you would use to get through other major challenges in life. And it's not only tapping into inner strength. I think that's one of the things that was really beautiful when I was looking at this research, is people are thinking of loved ones. They are imagining their loved ones being proud of them. They are thinking about other people in the world who are struggling and viewing their own willingness to persist in this race as a kind of like collective humanity of being able to get through things that are difficult. They turn in their mind to positive memories and they replay really cherished memories. It's so interesting that, so it's not only the sense of inner toughness that emerges from these events, but you learn about all the different capacities human beings have for enduring.
Yeah, that's so wonderful, so wonderful. And again, coming back to our theme of cross-country and run anywhere, I'm really interested the whole concept of, I guess, call it green exercise, which you allude to in the book, and how important that is. And you know, so, you know, we don't all have the luxury and privilege of being able to run in nature, but talk to us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about that importance of, even if you're in a city, trying to get into the green space and run in nature, please, Kelly.
Yeah, so people who exercise outdoors report some like really profound experiences, you know, a tremendous sense of relief of anxiety, a feeling, you know, at peace, at one with the universe. There's something going on when people run outdoors that is, it's almost like people are having a switch flipped in their brains that puts them into this like transcendent state. And as it turns out, we now know from studies that when people are active outdoors, it actually creates a kind of focus and mindfulness and mind quieting that looks a lot like what happens if you train in meditation for decades and spend tens of thousands of hours learning to focus the mind and calm the mind. People experience this spontaneously when they run in nature. And so that's part of what makes green exercise so special. First of all, if you're somebody who has a mind that's not always your friend because you worry a lot or you're self-critical, and it's hard to kind of turn that off, exercising outdoors can be a tremendous relief, a way to access a different state of mind. Also, it can be a really spiritual experience for a lot of people. And it's not only just, changes that you can observe in the brain, but people report really feeling connected to life itself. And of course, that makes sense. When we're out in nature, we shift into a state of having to be aware of our environment. And that really is part of what it means to be human, is to figure out how to navigate the world and how to be a part of the natural world. One other thing that I'll say that is, I thought was just the oddest, most miraculous thing, which is that the bacteria in just dirt that might be on a running trail, that there's bacteria in dirt that actually acts as an antidepressant when you inhale it, like when you kick up dirt on the running trail, or you get, dirt under your nails if you're gardening. There's something about being out in nature where you're literally imbibing these microorganisms that reduce loneliness and reduce depression. It's like, in order for us to be at peace, we actually need to literally breathe in the natural world.
That is so, and those of us that have kids, they talk about the importance of them playing in the mud in their formative years and continuing to have them play in the mud. So I guess, final thing, we're pretty much out of time, but, in this increasingly digital world that we're in, clearly even more digital during COVID, you seem to be saying that that's even more important now. Just get out in the green as much as you can, get to your parks if you can, run along rivers, lakes, kick up the dirt, get it under your fingernails, get in your garden. A final point around that you'd like to talk about before we wrap up, please?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be ideal running weather, right? So it can be in the rain, it can be in the cold. Research shows that being in nature, different types of of weather and environments can bring out different aspects of the benefits of green exercise. So even in the cold, even in the rain, don't be afraid of the outdoors. And often when you give into, allowing yourself to be a part of it, you can reap the benefits, even if it's not, the perfect run day that you imagined.
Kelly, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. So many great takeaways that are so relevant to today's audience. We'll give the details for them to download the book or buy the book and follow you. So much great information for people. Thanks so much. Great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
So many wonderful insights. Don't be afraid of the outdoors. It doesn't have to be perfect weather. Get the mud under your fingernails, get out there, enjoy, and have a wonderful time in the outdoors. And I think there's been a number of posts in there asking the name of the book. So to reiterate it, it's called The Joy of Movement, How Exercise Helps Us Find Happiness, Hope, Connection, and Courage. No more important time now with COVID, getting out there and running, and a great read. So I would thoroughly recommend that. Available on Amazon and Kindle and various other platforms, and obviously in plenty of bookstores. Kelly is based in California, so absolutely certain it's across America for those of you. We'll get some other details which we will follow up with. What we will be doing during the course of the next segment, there's a number of presentations that are coming up, and we have already set up a web page where you'll be able to download those. Oliver will put that link in a number of times, and we're also going to be following up, sending those out, the link again, and also the recording, and we'll give some details of Kelly's book again in that. Oliver's going to launch another poll, but we're going to move right along, and one of the key pieces, obviously, we had that wonderful panel on World Cross Country Championships. Now is the opportunity for you to, if you're interested, if you've got engaged in that, to look at the opportunity to potentially bid to host the 2024 World Cross Country Championships. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce shaping up the sport's top event, World Cross Country Championship bidding briefing, and a big welcome, Mark Hurst, who is the bidding manager from World Athletics.
Thank you, Chris. I was very tempted to take this presentation outdoors after that very inspiring interview with Kelly McGonigal, although I'm not sure you'd hear me over the birds today. Hi folks, thank you very much for joining us. Let me just share my screen with you all. Okay, now we're looking forward to venturing off the beaten track today to talk to you about the World Cross Country Championships. What is new and how will this event boost your community? We are World Athletics, and our vision is to use the power and accessibility of athletics and our athletes to create a healthier and fitter world. We plan to realize this vision through our World Championship events, known as the World Athletics Series. These include 7 of the highest profile global championships in our sport. Each event is carefully curated to bring unique experiences to life, to help race organizers, member federations, and host regions achieve your specific goals. We have the network and capacity to upscale any international competition into a truly global one, attracting the world's best athletes and millions of fans, both in person and across all digital platforms. Today, we're going to hone in on the World Cross Country Championships, but feel free to reach out to us on any of our World Athletics Series events. The World Cross Country Championships is a landscape-based endurance race and has become one of the most entertaining foot races in the world. Now, this is an ideal opportunity to showcase your region and its best features to the world, as it's a perfect combination of world-class endurance sport, mass participation, and destination marketing. The World Cross Country Championships is one of the toughest races that exists. Not only do you have to compete with a world-class lineup, you also have to compete with a course which demands not only speed and endurance, but also technical expertise, tactical savvy, and bravery. All of us that love running know that cross country is a race that might best sum up the roots of our sport and the human condition. It's not about times, it's about the elements, the mixed terrain, the suffering, and the power of resilience. Now I'd like to hand back over to Chris and the team in the studio to take a quick look at the previous edition in Aarhus, Denmark in 2019. What a game changer of a championship that was. And really marked an exciting new era for the World Cross Country Championship. Now, we're delighted to announce that the bids are now open for the next 2 editions of the World Cross Country Championships, taking place in 2024 and 2026. This event now includes 5 official World Championship races, which are accessible and can take place anywhere. The senior men's and women's races, where the best 5 runners from in every country across any distance ranging from 1,500 meters to marathon typically participate, making this one of the most competitive races to win. The mixed relay race, which is a fast-paced event with world-class middle distance runners going all out in an epic team-based format. The under 20 men's and women's races, where the future stars of distance running emerge for the first time on the global scene. All 5 races will be held on a single day, and we are happy to work with hosts on expanding the program to cover more days by including additional running related opportunities that hosts feel will contribute to both the profile of the event and their community. We'll discuss this in more detail on the next slide, but before we do, we're also pleased to confirm that the World Masters Championships will be included in this program, and we're in discussions with other official races to be included as well, based on local preferences. The World Cross Country Championships is more than just medals. It offers a feast of additional opportunities for organizers and host regions, including mass races. And whilst the World Championship races are reserved for elite runners, that does not deny any brave soul taking on the World Championship course. Mass participation races allow recreational runners to race in the footsteps of the world's best, surrounded by cheering spectators and their loved ones. A health and fitness expo can be organized for the endurance and lifestyle sport industry. Visitor travel packages and adventure activities can be created for participants and spectators to enhance their experience in the great outdoors and encourage visitors to extend their time in the host region. Running clinics with custom-made training sessions can be rolled out locally and nationally through running clubs and communities. School engagement via national school and youth races can be held alongside the main event. A heritage exhibition can be displayed, telling the remarkable story of cross country, the world's original extreme sport, with artifacts dating back to 1831. Not to mention parkrun partnerships, running conferences, injury prevention seminars, and coaching courses, which can all be tied into this great event. Now, taking a look at how organizers can generate revenues from the World Cross Country Championships. Firstly, through the race directly, including national sponsorships, possible admission tickets, merchandise, concession revenues, and commercial hospitality sales. And secondly, through the additional events just mentioned, including mass participation registration fees, travel packages, and local hotel commissions, health and fitness expo floor space, running clinic fees, and conference admission fees. Now, let's consider the overarching benefits to the host region and the return on investment across economic, social, and environmental pillars. Firstly, economic benefits. The total direct economic impact of the World Cross Country Championships in our host 2019 was over $3 million. There were around 10,000 spectators that turned out for that race, of which 48% were out-of-town visitors. There were also over 2,000 recreational runners that took part in that race, of which 74% were out-of-town visitors. Secondly, social benefits. Given the increased awareness of running benefits to both physical and mental health, the World Cross Country Championships might be the perfect catalyst to promote health and well-being to any level of runner or spectator in your region. 43% of spectators at the World Cross Country Championships in our host 2019 said that attending the event had inspired them to do more recreation or sport than they would normally. All World Athletics Series events can promote health and fitness in your community, although the World Cross Country Championships stands out because it promotes this concept of green exercise that Dr. Kelly McGonigal mentioned. A number of studies have shown that green exercise is like active mindfulness, helping those struggling with anxiety, grief, and depression in particular. Now, if we consider perceptions of division in society today, the World Cross Country Championships can play a role in helping to build closer communities and generate greater civic pride, as well as encouraging diversity and inclusion. At the World Cross Country Championships in Aarhus 2019, 94% of local residents felt proud that their city hosted the World Championships. And one of the most beautiful things about cross country is complete gender balance on the field of play, with equal prize money for men and women. And the mixed relay compounds this commitment even further. The World Cross Country Championships is genuinely an event for the entire family, with fans at Aarhus comprising of 51% men and 49% women. Thirdly, environmental benefits. In recognition of the environmental challenges faced by cities today and the growing scrutiny under which the event industry is placed, World Athletics will work with organizers to implement a sustainable management system. This will demonstrate to internal and external stakeholders an authentic walk-the-talk commitment to sustainability. World Athletics has a particular focus on air quality, and our team will measure this at the event to help improve the awareness of its impact to both health and performance. And there's also an important fourth pillar, image and reputation benefits. The World Cross Country Championships offers an excellent opportunity to engage the local community and showcase a destination's unique landscape, whether it's highlands, forests, jungles, grasslands, beaches, or even desert. Breathtaking races take place on courses as scenic as they are brutal. Event coverage incorporates over 134 media accreditations. This race will be visible in every country in the world across TV and digital. 5.7 million viewers tuned in to watch some form of the cross-country championships in Aarhus 2019 during the competition. And once available on YouTube, those figures keep rising. This global media reach and profile can create a huge marketing boost for your city during and after the event. Speaking about after the event, let's look at the World Cross Country Championships and how it can promote the joy of running, bring communities closer together with a lasting legacy. At Aarhus 2019, cross-country legends visited schools to share the positive effect of cross-country running. Some 200 children participated in cross-country workshops, and over 700 children took part in the finals of the National Cross-Country Youth Championships. And Aarhus 2019 also allowed running enthusiasts and local residents to play a part in the event, with a total of 332 individuals volunteering on the day, and a sociable, memorable experience for all involved. The World Championship course can also be a legacy in itself, and hosts are encouraged to look into retaining or relocating the course with a marked route similar to hiking or mountain bike trails to lead a valuable resource for future weekend warriors and adventure seekers. Now, this course can become a new home for existing races, national championships, or even help launch new races. Every city has its own signature. So if any of this presentation has struck a chord with you and made you more interested in hosting the World Cross Country Championships, let's briefly consider the next steps in the process. Today, we are launching the 2024 and 2026 editions of the World Cross Country Championships, with a bid guide available on our website next week. The pre-qualification form is currently available on our website, and the submission deadline for this is currently the 1st of June, 2021. We will then share a bid application form with those qualified candidates, and the submission deadline for that is the 1st of October, 2021. Finally, to answer some frequently asked questions, the indicative budget of this event is between 1.75 million and 2.25 million US dollars. Budgets will obviously vary on a case-by-case basis, depending on the cost of living in the host region and the strength of the commercial program, which can help offset costs through in-kind sponsorships. Based on the World Athletic Global Calendar, the preferred date for this event is the second week of February, but we may be open to other dates. And the course will ideally be a looped 2-kilometer course, designed on an open or woodland area, mostly covered by grass with sections of sand, water, and everyone's favorite, the mud. We will work with the hosts to create a course which will be remembered as a beautiful yet challenging frame that will stay with runners and spectators forever. So that's all we have time for today. But if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch. You can reach us on bidding@worldathletics.org, or you can contact me directly on mark.hurst@worldathletics.org. Thank you very much for listening, and happy running, everyone.
Okay.
I'll just pass back over to Chris and the team.
Thanks so much, Mark, for those great insights, the opportunity that it presents, that amazingly inspiring video. And for those of you that might not have got it, it was up on the screen quickly. We'll post it in the chat. I'll ask Oliver to put it there. But if you'd like more information, bidding@worldathletics.org. And we're also going to post, as I mentioned, a link in the chat where you can download the full presentation and the other presentations that we have coming up. So keep an eye on the chat for that. And we're going to we've already put the results of that poll up. We're now going to move on to an interview that I did, another interview earlier this week. It's a promo interview for the Bathurst World Championship Global Challenge, which is a virtual version of what was supposed to be happening in Bathurst, obviously postponed for obvious reasons. I had a little chat earlier this week with Wayne Larden, the event director of the Bathurst World Cross Country Championships, who's also the event director of the Sydney Marathon Running Festival. Sit back and enjoy. It's about a 5.5-minute presentation, question and answer with Wayne. Hi, Wayne. Great to see you again.
Good to see you, Chris. It's been a while. Hope you're well.
It's been a while. Last time was on the ground in Singapore before this all happened at Mass Participation World in 2019. And great to catch up. We've got some exciting things to discuss in a very, very quick little segment. But delighted to hear that it's a bit of a world first that you're putting on together with World Athletics and the Cross Country Championships. You've got a global virtual challenge. Tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah, mate. Well, we launched a world first, a virtual World Cross Country Championships, which we're calling the World Athletics Cross Country Championships Global Challenge. It's a bit of a mouthful, but why this has happened is that the LOC, when we were forced to postpone the event, the World Cross Country Championships in Bathurst, Australia, identified a risk that we might lose our audiences and we might lose engagement. So we came together as a group and workshopped what we could do to stay engaged, to stay connected, and to do something a little bit different, from your standard virtual runs, and actually deliver something that aligns with the objectives of hosting the World Cross Country Championships, and that is to get people to Bathurst. So we teamed up with ASICS and their digital assets, Runkeeper and Race Roster, and created the Global Challenge. And what the Global Challenge is essentially is a replication of what people can experience in Bathurst in 2022. So it's a promotion of the championships themselves, of course, but also of the mass participation program that will take place in Bathurst 2022. And, one of the objectives of New South Wales government is to obviously bring people to Bathurst. And we feel strongly that a successful mass participation program will best deliver on the objectives of getting people to Bathurst. So the Global Athletics Challenge, the World Cross Country Global Challenge, replicates the program that people can actually take part in Bathurst. So, there's distances for everyone, and it's engaging to everyone. We've got some fantastic bling, beautiful medals for people to win, and at the same time reinforcing all of those key messages and destination promotional sort of activities that we need to undertake to promote a championship.
Gee, that sounds great, Wayne. And so I guess, the question that probably you've been asked many times is virtual's exploded. There's lots of same out there. There's people doing exciting new things like what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about what makes this different in just a couple of minutes.
Look, I think we all know there's been a plethora of virtual events just replicating or substituting for real events in 2020. What we've observed throughout the year is that, the events that have something that is a little different, that have meaning, are the ones that are achieving the best engagement. Now, there's a massive fan base for cross-country running around the world through the athletics family, through, mass participation events. And, nearly anyone who went to school has probably run cross-country. So, delivering a world championship style event virtually through the Global Challenge is something we felt would be innovative and different. And it's proven correct. It's been very popular. In fact, we've just extended the event through till the third week of April. So there's been huge demand. It's been very successful. We're seeing great engagement, and we think it's something that, you know, moving forward could sit nicely alongside any championship to, you know, build engagement, to build reach, to build frequency throughout the year. So you're talking to people not just in the few months leading up to the event, but for, you know, an entire year or more before the event to achieve your objectives. So we felt it fit nicely alongside our objectives, and, you know, we're really happy with how it's gone.
Fantastic! Congratulations. That sounds really awesome, and you know, great to see that you've had so much take up that you've extended it. Tell us where people can log on. Give us the website, please.
Yes, so it's the globalathleticschallenge.com. So hop on there. You know, we'd love all of you label racers to share this, you know, around the world and to your own audiences. It's fun. It's different. It's exciting, and hopefully it will promote the World Athletics Cross Country Championships next year. So we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to hosting the championship. The first time Australia is hosting the World Cross Country Championship, and of course it's one of my favourite championships, and it's the quintessential distance runners championship, in my opinion. So we're all very excited to welcome the athletics family and World Masters too. For the first time, you will have seen, we'll be competing at the World Cross Country Championships as part of the championship program too. So a lot of innovation going into Bathurst next year.
Fantastic, Wayne. Well, thanks for taking some time out. I know you're a busy man with your Sydney Running Festival commitments and everything. Really appreciate you coming and sharing that. Wish you all the very best, and great to catch up with you again.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I also want to extend my best wishes to all of you label racers around the world. It's been a tough year. We've got things going, you know, getting back online here in Australia now. And you know, my best wishes to all of you for 2021 and getting back to running. So good luck.
Thanks there, Wayne Larden, and the good wishes that he shares as well, and all the best with that wonderful initiative. Alessio's posted the link in the chat. It's wonderful to see all the interaction that's going on in the chat there, so feel free to jump in. There's quite a few questions. We don't have a lot of time for questions today, so sorry if we haven't got to all of those. We'll have some specific ones after the next two presentations that are coming up. Thelma, you issued a challenge there. I need to go back to my youth, my uni days running cross country, and you've invited me or challenged me to enter a team in the Bathurst Global Challenge. Challenge accepted. I'll be registering for that. So thank you for that. And Oliver's already posted the link in there to download the presentations, and we'll continue to do that. As we move on to our next penultimate presentation, great to welcome Nicholas Rizzo, who's the fitness research director at runrepeat.com. Many of you will know Run Repeat, the great work they've been doing for a number of years now in research in our industry. And the title of the presentation, it's all about outdoors fitness trends going into 2021. Welcome, Nicholas. Good to see you. Joining us from Taunton, Massachusetts.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be able to have the opportunity to speak to you all. And thank you to the World Athletics and Mass Participation World for having me here today. All right, so today I'm going to be talking to you guys about COVID-19's impact on the health and fitness industry. And so let me just share this with everyone. All right, and we are good. All right, so, you know, over the past year, I've had the pleasure of conducting a bunch of research on the health and fitness industry. So we've had a lot of questions that we've wanted to answer, which are, you know, how are gyms being impacted? Were gyms being replaced, and what were they being replaced with? Has our approach to fitness changed over the past year? And is there going to be a long-lasting boom to running because of this pandemic? And so to answer those questions, we've surveyed over 75,000 respondents, and we've published 9 different studies. And today I'm going to be talking to you about some of that data and what we're seeing and what we think that means. So, Run Repeat's all about transparency with our data, from the shoes that we review to the research we run. And so I wanted to briefly explain just how all these surveys are ran. And so at Run Repeat, we have about 2 million monthly visitors. And so what we do is that after a user engages with the site, we make the opportunity to partake in a survey freely available to them. We wait until they've engaged with the site for some time so we know they're an actual user. We prompt them there with the survey. And we use filtering questions to make sure we're targeting the specific audiences we're looking to ask these questions of, like gym members or runners. And so with that in mind, the main focus of most of our studies revolves around gyms, which are, have always been the pillar of health and fitness for some time. So our first study was done in April of 2020 during the initial lockdowns. And what we wanted to do was ask gym members, will you return to your gym upon reopening? And when we asked that question, we found that 47% of those globally said they wouldn't be going back when they opened. And at the same time, in the US, that number was more than half. So 50.16% of the gym members said they were not going to be going back. And at that same time, we asked them, have you had any changes with your gym memberships so far? So whether or not they had already canceled, you can see in the green, in the chart in the dark green. If they were considering canceling, you can see in the light green, and if they were going to be keeping it in the red. And what we saw was at that point, already during the lockdowns, gyms have lost 12.39% of their membership, having them canceled. And during that same period of time, there was another quarter of gym members who are actively considering canceling, which represents an overall larger threat that will for gyms and potential negative outcome over the course of the pandemic, that people were already considering canceling as well. And so to see how that situation was evolving, we ran a follow-up study in August of 2020. And this time we were asking gym members, have you returned to your gyms since the lockdowns? And when we asked this question, you look at the chart here, it says in the light green, you'll see those that have returned, and in the dark green, those that haven't returned. So when we asked, what we found was that only a third of members had actually returned by that point, which was much fewer than we expected from our original study, and as well as much fewer than what the gym members themselves had expected. I believe that when we asked during the lockdowns, people were a lot more hopeful. And as that situation evolved and the news kept evolving over the coming months, the reality kind of became that it wasn't the time for them to go back. And so that's why we saw such a lower return rate. Again, in August, in that same survey, in that follow-up survey, we then asked those same members about their cancellation rates. And so you can see here in the dark green that cancellation rate had increased by more than 8% since our first survey, increasing to more than a fifth of gym members having already canceled their memberships as of August. And at this point, another 39% were actively considering canceling their memberships. So you can see that the trend's going in one direction, where less people are going back, more people are canceling, and more people are considering canceling. Now, in our most recent survey, it was in March 2021, so last month, we wanted to ask the questions of how many gym members are going to the gym now. All right. And so when we did that, you can see here in the dark green on that first bar, the global average was less than a third of members are actively exercising at their gyms right now. Now, that could be due to multiple variables and multiple factors, whether that depends on just they themselves not feeling comfortable returning, whether their gym has certain capacity limits and they're just not able to get in, or local regulations and rules around the reopening of gyms and offering of certain services. But in this recent survey, that really wasn't the most important question that we asked. The most important question we asked was whether or not members planned to return to their gyms when vaccinated. And so over here on the chart, you see in the dark green, it shows that those that answered no, which in the US was more than a third of total gym members. So that shows that more than a third of the current gym members there are not going to be coming back even when they're vaccinated. And so what's interesting is that more than a quarter of the members that stated that it isn't enough for they themselves to be vaccinated in order to return, they are also waiting on their friends, families, and loved ones to be vaccinated, which you can see in the red. And what that means is that it's gyms are waiting for the vaccine as as the approach for people to come back, and this is going to be that kind of positive momentum. And what we're seeing is that goalpost is being moved again for gyms further back. They have to wait until the vaccines have been more widely distributed in order to see that full return that they're expecting, and for many gyms really need in order to continue on. And again, during the same survey in March, we asked the same gym members whether they had canceled in dark green or paused their memberships in light green. And at this time, nearly 30% of members globally have canceled by this point, with another 25% of members having paused their membership. That represents more than, nearly 50% of gym members not paying their gyms, which is obviously a massive decline in revenue for gyms and makes it much more difficult to survive throughout the pandemic and be able to have the opportunity to succeed post-pandemic. So when we're looking at overall this data and these 3 studies we ran on this one topic, the data is pretty clear. The situation hasn't really improved for gyms over the past year. During this time, the would-be gym goers have experienced a world without gyms. They're exposed to new solutions and have had to change their approaches. What once was the core or pillar of health and fitness is now becoming decentralized, with the industry being unbundled and competition being raised from all angles, with the direct competitor to gyms being at-home fitness and the outdoors. So while all these changes were occurring, we were curious about exactly how has our approach to staying fit and achieving our fitness goals changed over the course of the pandemic, which leads us into the study that we published as of January, which is the Fitness Trends Report. And so in this study, what we did is we surveyed respondents asking what was their primary way of staying fit and achieving their fitness goals going into 2021, which you can see in the chart here in the light green. And how does that compare to the start of 2020 prior to the pandemic, which you can see in the dark green? The trends are broken down into categories of outdoor activities like running, hiking, walking, cycling, at-home fitness equipment, gyms, sports, personal trainers or nutritionists, and online fitness courses, classes, and subscriptions. And what we found was outdoor activities were rated the #1 way to stay fit in 2020 and in 2021, while also seeing an increase of 14.6% over the year. And so these are just natural active adults that are looking more to get outside during this time. What is also clear is that the decline that gyms have faced over the past year is also represented in this data, where once a fifth of active adults saw it as their best option, it now has dropped more than 50% to being the 3rd favorite overall trend in 2021. Now, more active adults see at-home fitness equipment as a better solution than gyms to achieving their fitness goals. And those 2 points highlight the common trend we will see moving forward. People are moving away from gyms. They've been exposed to new options and they're testing them out, and many are finding greater success or enjoyment from those options. And they're focusing primarily on outdoor activities and at-home fitness equipment to meet their needs and achieve those fitness goals that they have. And so in this graph here, what we're seeing is the overall percentage change for each trend overall, just to kind of give it an overview of how they've changed from 2020 to 2021. With options like outdoor activities in the first bar, at-home fitness equipment in the second, and then personal trainers and nutritionists and online fitness classes in the last 2, all seeing growth over the course of the pandemic. And as we've touched upon already, gyms have been facing a decline, as well as sports as a form of staying fit and active saw a decline over the past year, most likely due to social distancing guidelines and the closure of kind of the environment where you'd be able to participate in those sports. And here in these charts, what we're going to be looking at are the individual trends. So what we've done is we've broken down this trend here for outdoor activities and exercising outdoors. And we're looking at it at 2020 in the dark green, 2021 in the light green, and then the percentage difference in that red green, the red bar. And we were showing them from the different cohorts of respondents that we surveyed. So there's overall active adults in the left, gym members in the center, and runners on the right. And so what we see is that, outdoor activities was that #1 trend, and we can see that nearly 3/4 of runners are choosing outdoor activities, growing over the past year by 14.8%. So runners are now relying more on going outdoors, whether that's more running or hiking or other activities. They're going outdoors more as well. And the same goes for active adults. Additionally, is that nearly half of gym members now are looking to the outdoors to reach their fitness goals and stay fit. And so we're seeing a significant increase over the year of 39% of gym members seeing outdoors as their best option. And here we're looking at the next trend, which is at-home fitness equipment. And again, we have the same 3 cohorts of active adults, gym members, and runners. And this trend has grown dramatically over the past year. The growth has been primarily driven by gym members who have invested in equipment to replace their needs for gyms. And that trend has grown by 150% in that cohort. We look at runners too as well. They also saw a significant growth in home fitness, increasing by 49%. So 13% of runners now see at-home fitness as their best solution to stay fit moving forward. As expected, gyms face the biggest decline. So that's what we're looking at here in this chart is the trends for gyms due to the pandemic. So having decreased by more than 60% for every cohort. Now only 15% of gym members and 5.6% of runners believe gyms and health clubs are their best option to stay fit in 2021, representing a significant decrease. So with so many gym members shifting to other options in 2021, we wanted to know, what are they replacing gyms with? And so to do that, we specifically looked at the data of these gym members here who chose gyms as their best option in 2020, but no longer chose it in 2021. And that's the data that we see here. So we see that those that are replacing gyms are doing so primarily with outdoor activities and at-home workout equipment. You can see that nearly half of those that replace the gym are doing so with going outside, activities like running and hiking and walking to stay active. And a third of those are doing so with at-home workout equipment. Interestingly too, is that, a direct companion to at-home workout equipment like online fitness courses and classes is there in third with 7%. So the overall trend is heavily in that direction where the workouts and strength training type exercise is primarily happening in the home. They have the potential to partner that with other solutions, but one of those solutions are primarily outdoor activities. And so what's also important about this is that as gyms become somewhat unbundled, with more and more people seeing home fitness as a suitable option, the natural companion to that is being outdoors. If someone has the strength equipment at home and they're no longer going to the gym, the natural process to engage in cardiovascular exercise is to go outdoors. So what have we learned over the past year, and what are we at Run Repeat looking to learn as we move forward? So gym member return rates were lower than expected and have not yet increased. From the first study in April during the lockdowns, we saw 50% where we're going to come back, and then as of August, only 30% did. And that number hasn't gone up in our most recent report. Nearly a third of those gym members won't return even when vaccinated. So, where people are depending in this industry on the vaccine to be a kind of a ray of hope and to bring people back, many will, and many are very excited to come back, but a large percentage of those people are not. And we don't know whether or not they'll come back 12 months from now or not as well either. Almost a third of memberships have been canceled at this point from the gym members that we've surveyed. Outdoor activities is the #1 trend, and home fitness is the fastest growing trend. And so we see people are getting outdoors more, they're engaging in running and hiking and walking, and they're looking to purchase at-home equipment, whether it be specific types of strength training equipment or cardio equipment or online solutions. That's what they're using to replace their gyms. Gyms are being replaced primarily with outdoor activities, like I said, like running, hiking, cycling, walking, and at-home fitness equipment. And we kind of see the natural companion to home fitness is outdoor activities. Again, if you have invested a significant deal in your home fitness equipment, you have lowered the need that you have for gyms. Some people will still have a gym membership, many will not. I, as someone who has been in this industry for over a decade and used to be a competitive powerlifter, fit into that category right now, where this is the first year where I haven't had a gym membership. I've developed all the necessary equipment I need at home to meet those strength training needs. And I've started running, which is a first for me over the past year, and getting outdoors more. So I kind of fit the mold of this exact data is showing us. And so where we kind of see that leading towards is an increasing reliance and investment in outdoor activities for overall health and fitness. People are going to see that as that option more and more and keep going and driving towards that option, which could lead to a potential boom in outdoor activities like running and possibly event participation. which leads directly to kind of what are we looking to learn next? What are the questions we're asking? And so one of the main questions is, how has running grown during the pandemic? There's been many reports covering how runners' perspectives have changed during the pandemic in regards to participation and all of that. But how many new runners are there? And then when we look at those new runners, how do they differ from people that were running prior to the pandemic? Like, will people who began running during the pandemic look to participate in races? And at what rate does that differ from runners that were already here? How do motivations of new runners differ from those who have been running since before the pandemic? And what role do races play in motivation to run and exercise? These are the kind of the questions that we've already been working towards trying to ask and find the answers to. But I want to repeat, we're always open to ideas, insights, data, and we're always looking to collaborate and partner with other people who want to ask the right questions, explore them, and bring the answers to other people and make that data and that research and those reports widely available. So we can answer those questions for as many people as possible. So if you ever have any ideas, if you're ever looking to potentially collaborate or partner on something, feel free to reach out to me at nick@runrepeat.com. I'm always happy to connect. I love to geek out over data. As you can see, it's what I've done primarily for 12 months now, over the past year. So happy to do so. And I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you and some of your expert insights and input. For any of those that want to see some of the studies that we reference, the data in more in depth and detail, these are the 4 studies that we reference. So if you get access to the PDF files afterwards, you can click on them here. If you have any questions regarding those or other studies we've done over the past 12 months, you can direct them to me at Nick.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Some great insights there. And for me, one of the big takeaways was opportunity, opportunity, opportunity for our industry. And you're nodding there, I can see. I guess the big question is, how do we harness? And we've addressed that on a number of our MPW webinars. Is there's great opportunities, but we need to think outside the box a little bit in terms of how we bring these people in, create them into event participants. So great opportunities. Thanks for all that research. There were a couple of questions there that I saw in the chat. So someone was asking, is this just a US study or is it global?
So all of the reports we do, we make available to global traffic. And so we report on the countries in the full studies there that have the most robust data sets that meet the pass-through criteria by our data analysis team. And so we report primarily on those. If you are from someone from a different country and your data isn't available in that report and you'd be interested in seeing what we do have on it, you can always feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to see what I can pull for you.
Great, thank you for that. And then there was also a question on the sample size. How many people was that? I think someone said, you said 75,000 at one stage. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in all of those studies that we reported on is 75,000 with, the first study being over 10K, our first follow-up being over 5,000, our second follow-up being over 11,000. And then our fitness trend study was of 3 different cohorts of about nearly 2,000 runners, 2,000 gym members, and I believe a little over 4,000 active adults. And so it was a large sum of people. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think those are all the questions. A reminder again that Oliver's putting the link in the chat periodically. You can download these, and I saw there were a number of clickable links in there for some more information. But, I think the final thing for me, just to wrap that one up, increasing reliance for outdoor activities for health and well-being of the population. Absolutely. I see you nodding there. Great opportunity. Let's go and harness that as an industry. There's plenty of optimism coming. Whilst there's still a few bumps on this road, the future is absolutely bright in so many ways. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for joining us. And I will say farewell to you, and we'll move on to our final section. We're going to put the last poll in there. I'm going to ask Oliver to do that. And we're going to welcome our final guest, Alessio, who's going to do our wrap up. We are running a little bit over, folks. It's just been so much great content. We've made sure that we let people have their voice and continue to running. So please bear with us. I think we're going to finish maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes later than we'd intended. But as you would appreciate, a pretty crammed program. We had some technicals there which pushed us behind a little bit at one stage. But I hope you're enjoying this. And we now welcome Jason Gewitz, who is the editor and publisher of Sports Travel. He's joining us from Denver, Colorado. and I'm going to have a chat with him for about 20 minutes. We're going to talk about outdoor sporting events and their impact for travel destinations. Are you there, Jason?
I am, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Wonderful to see you, and really looking forward to this. We had a great chat yesterday in our preparation, and I think there's some really wonderful insights. And again, they come back to this real positivity. You've got a great story to share in terms of the opportunity that it creates for our industry. But why don't you start, please? Just give us a little bit of background of you and the business, and how long you've been around and how long you've been doing this, getting these great insights.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much, Chris, and to World Athletics for having us here. You've been talking about opportunity. That's a word that I keep hearing in all the presentations this morning, and I think you're going to hear more of that in what I've got to say, because there are tremendous opportunities right now for destinations to be hosting cross-country events and other outdoor events. But like you said, just some context on Sports Travel Magazine and what we do. We have been publishing the magazine since 1997. Our readership are a mix of event organizers, rights holders, and the destinations and venues that are looking to host their events. So we follow closely this world of sports events, who's hosting them, what they're doing, how they're attracting attendees, participants, the whole lot. We also do a number of things around that. We organize an annual conference called the Teams Conference, which is an acronym for Travel, Events, and Management in Sports. We bring all these audiences together, rights holders, destinations, suppliers, to do business with each other. We are thankfully hosting a in-person event this year in September 27th through the 30th in Atlantic City, New Jersey. We do a similar event for the world of esports, the growing world of esports events. We have an event called the Esports Travel Summit that we do, which will be December 14th through 16th in Pittsburgh. And so we are also part of a larger group called the North Star Travel Group, which is the world's leading business-to-business media company that serves the travel and events industry. And so we cover sports-related travel, obviously, within that, but North Star as a whole covers the entire travel industry and the travel world. So it's been a fascinating time, obviously a challenging time for the travel industry here in the last year, but I'm here to tell you that sports-related travel has probably never had a better opportunity than it does right now at this moment, as we start to emerge from from this amazing and interesting and challenging last year.
Yeah, that sounds hugely positive. Let's talk about the economic impact that has been created so far, and you've got some ideas of where we were at pre-COVID, where it's got to now, and what that means in terms of the opportunity and the target as we come out of this. Where are we at right now? What kind of a low have we sunk to? Do you think we're still at kind of like the bottom of the curve, or is it starting to move up already?
The good news is I do genuinely feel that we have reached the bottom, or past the bottom at this point. Let me take you a step back, though. These are things that we study on an ongoing basis at Sports Travel, and I have a slide that you can pull up that talks about a particular study that we did right before the start of the pandemic. So these are 2019 numbers, and obviously we'll talk about what 2020 has done and what's going to be coming from here. But we were part of a study that the Sports Event and Tourism Association did. This was in partnership also with Longwoods International and Tourism Economics. And what these numbers reflect, these are numbers based in the United States, so these are North American numbers, but I think that we would find similar themes internationally as well. And what we found at the height, right before everything kind of fell off the cliff with the pandemic, was the steady growth of sports-related travel and the economic impact that it has. So nearly 180 million people traveled to sports events in the United States in 2019. These were either as a participant or as a spectator. And more importantly, all of that travel generated almost 70 million room nights. That's the real economic impact that we talk about when we talk about destinations looking to host these events. All those people coming into town, spending their money, staying in hotels. And the spending was significant. In the United States alone, that number was $45 billion with a B. It's in U.S. dollars, and that generated over $100 billion in business sales, both when you look at the indirect and the induced impact. So these are tremendous numbers that sports events bring to their destinations. Of course, there are other impacts of that. We know that the events serve to employ people in the host destinations. Nationwide in the U.S., again, over 700,000 jobs were sustained just by sports-related travel. And more importantly, for these host destinations, that money comes back to them. Here in the U.S., they generate those jobs, all this impact generate tax revenues, and so $14 billion in tax revenues in 2019, with quite a bit of that going to state and local governments. So this was where we were at the peak. And of course, we know that in 2020, these numbers are going to look a lot different and would look a lot different. But the good news is that we are starting to come out of it. We're seeing evidence of that across the board. I mentioned that we're part of the North Star Travel Group. Our meetings group has been conducting surveys of meeting planners and event organizers since the start of the pandemic. And our last survey, Chris, which we did in early March, showed the most optimism that we've seen about live events returning. Over 80% of the meeting planners that we talked to in that last survey said they are intending to organize a live in-person event by the end of the year. Most of that's later in the year, of course, but within that, sports is a silver lining. We are hearing more and more from destinations that they are turning their attention in either greater capacity now towards sports events and their ability to bring travelers in. Here in the United States, to a large extent, particularly at the amateur level and the youth level, events continue to be organized throughout last summer, throughout the worst of the pandemic. And in many cases and destinations here, it's not an exaggeration to say they were filling hotel rooms, entire hotel rooms, for some of these tournaments that were taking place. And when I think about cross country and some of the themes that we've been talking about today, we talk about outdoor events. Chris, outdoor events are going to be key to the recovery. They are, by their nature, seen as just safer events for people to be attending right now. So I do think there is tremendous opportunity out there, and we're starting to see this optimism, and we're starting to see evidence that people are returning and events are returning.
That's wonderful. Thanks. Some big numbers there, and what's interesting is that and I've been talking about this for a while. Economic impact. One of the things that the industry and I think sport generally still struggles to measure, and it's been spoken about a number of times on this call, is the social impact, and I think that's going to be so important after this. And one of the things that we touched on in our call yesterday, and there's increasing numbers of articles about the term that I'm coining de-urbanization. So, all those people that kind of migrated to the cities are now, there's almost a reversal, and there's evidence of people saying we want to go back to where we grew up. We want to live in the country. COVID's proven that we can work remotely, and this opportunity that creates around social and health impact in communities that in many instances were dying that are now being rebirthed. How do you see that moving into travel in terms of, particularly for our industry, opportunities maybe for more boutique events? People have reconnected with friends and family and nature, and wanting to go and visit the family that lives in the country. Are you starting to see some green shoots of that as an opportunity in the travel industry that our industry may be able to harness?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chris. I mean, there is no doubt that we hear this term all the time, this notion of pent-up demand. And there are any number of ways you can kind of quantify that right now. And I think there's no question that people around the world at the moment, they are anxious to get out, if they haven't already. They are finding ways to do it. And what's been interesting for us and what we cover is we're seeing it through sports events. We're, let's start with the cities and the bigger events. Here in the United States, today is opening day for the baseball season. All 30 teams in Major League Baseball here in the U.S. are going to be having spectators. A lot of those are outdoor venues, and we're seeing evidence that people are ready to come to those events. There was a study yesterday just in the Washington Post timed around the start of the baseball season that talked about how comfortable people are right now going to events. And it was an interesting mix. About 40% say they're ready to go, 40% probably not, another 20% unsure. But the key thing for this audience to know out of that just one study, 2/3 said they were comfortable attending an outdoor event. That's a significant number. And when I think of things like cross-country racing, you just mentioned this notion of getting to the outdoors. I want to pick back up on what the great Tracy Sutherland said in your opening session of these opportunities here for destinations just to be thinking about their outdoor space. When you think about a cross-country event, a running event, the timing is just perfect for destinations right now to be thinking about hosting these events and to be thinking creatively. One of the themes of our conference that we do, of the magazine that we have, is the notion of building these relationships between event organizers and destinations. The best events have this fantastic partnership. And I think at the moment, as people are looking, as you were suggesting, possibly to get out of the cities, to be in a more rural environment, to be more connected to nature. I mean, what better time right now, in my mind, for event organizers to be thinking creatively in partnership with the destinations. I mean, the cities, the venues, they know what makes them unique. They have all kinds of ideas of what possibly could be a venue for this particular sport we're talking about. And with the creativity of a race organizer, maybe thinking a little differently, as Tracy said, you can have it on the beach, as we've heard, it can be in the desert. Just about every city I can think of, every destination I can think of, probably has a viable venue, for this sport. Maybe some more than others, but I think it just gets back to this notion of being creative in the events and the planning of them at the early stages. And we're seeing it. People will come. Your participants will come, and if done correctly, you'll have spectators as well. There's a strong desire for it, and I don't think you're off on it, Chris. I think people are wanting to be outdoors in nature if possible. We've all been at home long enough, and I think we're starting to see everything slowly emerge here. That said, we're not there yet. I mean, it's April. We're not talking about the Boston Marathon this week because that's going to be later in the fall. We're still seeing that impact, but as I said at the outset, we're seeing so many events being pushed to the end of the year, and this very strong optimism right now that those events are going to be held, and we won't be in this forever cycle of rescheduling and postponing. I genuinely do feel like we're near the end of that.
That is really, I'm sure, music to many people's ears. And I wanted to pick up on the point you made there about relationships with destinations. And I know that Phil Purvis is on the call, and he regularly joins he's here tonight, and I've seen a few comments in the chat, and he regularly joins our Strength in Numbers calls on every fortnightly Monday. And one of the points he makes, and he comes from the likes of Rugby World Cups and Olympics and FIFA and whatever, and he said, when we go to a town, we have a host city partnership agreement, but our industry goes and gets a permit. It's kind of like, give us permission to put an event that's bringing this massive impact to you, that's creating this social and health and well-being. And it's so far from this partnership. It's almost this kind of master-servant relationship. And we've allowed ourselves as an industry to be so vulnerable to that, we'll put it on, we'll take the commercial risk. Please give us a permit so we can put our event on, as opposed to maybe there's a way to change that narrative to say, this is a partnership. Let's work together. You as the host city can provide this for us. We as the event will provide that, and we all benefit from it. Are there, some examples of that you're seeing in terms of collaboration and creative thinking in that collaboration space? Because, across the industry, I still hear this, the biggest theme is so vexed every second Monday is we can't get our permits, we can't even get to the table, governments are so stretched. Any kind of ideas from how we bring people into towns to get people to recognize this and help with that partnership process? What's the right way to approach it?
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris. I mean, I would argue that your particular part of the sports event industry has unique challenges in that way. You're obviously not going to a stadium. You're not going necessarily to a convention center where you don't have to go through those hoops to get the permits. There's something unique about that for sure when we talk about mass participation races by their nature. If you're having a marathon, you're closing down streets. You're requiring a lot more than you would otherwise if you were having a basketball tournament somewhere inside an arena. So to that, I would just say, it may be a long-term play. These are continuing, ongoing relationships with cities. What we've found is that once venues have successfully been able, or destinations have been successfully been able to host your event, if it goes well, if they have a good relationship, if there's a true partnership there, we have seen evidence that gets easier over time. But my best advice kind of goes to everything that we cover in our industry. It is such a relationship-based industry. It's not always going to be easy. Unfortunately, I don't have a perfect answer to your question, but I do think that the answer lies in the notion of the long-term play of building up a relationship of trust on both ends. That the destination is providing what you need, that you're doing what you said you're going to do on the race organizer side. That seems to be what so much of our industry comes down to at the end of the day. And yes, there are challenges, and sometimes those challenges are incapable of being overcome. It's particularly hard now. I think the mass participation races, I would argue, were among the hardest hit during the last year when I think of all sports, all the things that we cover, just by their nature, that word mass, the notion of gathering, the difficulty right now in getting governments to pay attention to you for permits or anything else when they have so many other things on their plate, facing what they're facing with the pandemic. So it's been tough, even for us to kind of watch. But at the same end, as we were talking about this optimism, it's there. We're seeing races come back. We're seeing them sell out pretty much as quickly as things become available. Ironman here in the United States, they're selling out every event they have. At the same time, there's, as we talked about, there's still some challenges. Not every race is going forward as we're talking right now in early April. But by the summer, by the fall, we're seeing all of those events still scheduled. So, to me, Chris, it just comes down to this host city event organizer relationship. I think it's just key to everything, and probably never more so now. But it's that opportunity we've been talking about as well. What better time right now to think creatively about events and to be thinking differently about these particular type of events for all involved. People will come.
Well, and I guess circling that back to the beginning of that conversation about that deurbanization, as a generalization, probably easier to have that host city conversation with more of a destination event than a big city event that's being, you're one of music festivals and all the other events and everything else that's happening, but you have this opportunity to really do that. And on that, you shared a really interesting statistic on our planning call, which I think again presents an opportunity, because people might be sitting here saying, well, people are scared to travel. They're not going to get on an airplane. That's presented an opportunity. You were saying that I think I'm right in saying it's stretched the boundary that people are prepared to drive from. I think you said 1,000 miles to 1,600 miles or something like that. Yeah. You were talking in miles. My brain usually works in kilometers, but share that statistic because I think it's a really useful one for the industry to bear in mind.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Certainly at the height of the pandemic, when people really were skittish about getting on an airplane, and to some extent that may be true now. Although we're seeing a softening. You're seeing rates right now at airports being the highest that they've been in the last year right now. But what we found at the start of the pandemic, particularly here in the United States, but I imagine this would be the case in other international destinations, the notion of the drive time market increased dramatically. So you might have a city, say in the middle of the country here in the U.S., who relied on marketing themselves to some of the larger cities on the coast because they knew people would fly in. And now all of a sudden, those cities, I'm thinking of as an example, a city like Oklahoma City, right in the middle of the United States, they were marketing their events and their destination to a place where I live in Denver, which is pretty, beyond their boundary for drive time. That would be a decent drive, probably 9-10 hours from here, to get there. And all of a sudden, those markets were in play for them because people felt more comfortable driving and they felt more comfortable traveling that way. And we'll see if that holds up. But I think one interesting part of this entire pandemic from a destination marketing perspective was this interesting shift and this broadening of what the market is, of where they might attract visitors. And when I'm talking about visitors, I'm not necessarily talking about leisure travel. I'm talking about cities that are hosting sports events that are going to different cities now and saying, hey, you can drive here to compete in our basketball tournament, our volleyball tournament, whatever the case may be. We saw that happening a lot, and I'm very interested to see if that kind of holds up, particularly now that air travel is starting to come back. But that's something, for the destinations on this call to be thinking about as well, where your market is. When I think about your world championships that we've been talking about, which just look absolutely tremendous, why wouldn't you be trying to get everyone you can to come see that experience, especially in the destinations you've got, with all the creativity that I see coming along, and as Mark was sharing in his bid presentation, all the opportunity that's there. This is the time for destinations, certainly, and event organizers just to be thinking differently and maybe in different terms than they typically would have.
Wonderful. We could talk for another hour, I'm sure, some wonderful insights, but we're out of time. I just want to have a quick look. I think there was one or two questions here that I'll pick up quickly. Philip says, how do you source this information? How can a host town source this type of information? And then there's one that you can probably touch on there. I saw from Stefan in Switzerland, Stefan Movin. Do you have numbers that split sports spectator travelers and sport participant travelers? We're very tight on time, so if you could just give a quick answer to that, we could always connect those gentlemen with you afterwards if necessary. But
yes,
if you wouldn't mind, just a quick sum on that, please.
Yeah, on the slide that I presented, obviously that was just highlights of what was a much larger study that's available on our site at sportstravelmagazine.com, and I can make that link available in the chat here when we're done for anyone who wants to see the full report. There is quite a bit more information in that report than I necessarily put here for the highlights. And as far as that split between people who are traveling to spectate or watch an event as opposed to participate in it, it is really a case-by-case basis on that. In some cases, we do have some statistics that break that down. It all goes down to the reporting on some of these events. As you know, Chris, some people do a much more thorough deep dive than others after their event. The good ones do take all that analysis into effect so they can figure out how they're doing for the next time. So it's hard to say generally, what that split might be, because it just depends. People going to watch the World Cup is different than all the people coming to compete in the World Cross Country Championships. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag there. It kind of depends on the event.
Wonderful. Jason Gewitz, thank you so much for making the time for those insights. We'll catch up with you at another time and keep moving on to wrap the program. And that slide will be available. Oliver's going to pop the link in again for those of you that would like to download. We have PDFs of all of the presentations. We will be sending the recording out. So it's my chance just to do a very quick wrap up. I do apologize. We've run a little bit over tonight, but I think it's been well worth all the insights and presentations that we've had. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for those of you that have stuck with us for the finish line. Don't run away yet. Give Alessio the opportunity to wrap it up from a World Athletics perspective. Just a very quick reminder, this was live streamed on Facebook, so those people that that maybe had a drop off early, or if you'd like to share it with colleagues, Mass Participation World Facebook page, MPW. It will be on the recording will be on the Mass Participation World YouTube channel by early next week, and we'll send an email out to everyone who registered. As I said, nearly 300 people registered. A couple of our other Mass Participation World initiatives every alternate week. So this week and now in 2 weeks' time on a Monday, I host Strength in Numbers, which is just a Zoom chat room with people from all over the world, from the likes of Mike Nishi, Chicago Marathon. We've had Dave McGilvray from Boston and many others that come and join us to share their insights. It's a confidential Zoom chat room where we can brainstorm ideas and share our challenges. Every alternate week, starting next week in terms of the cycle, we have free webinars. Next week, we're having last-minute cancellations, and we go from Riga Marathon that was cancelled 15 minutes before they started their road closures. We're hoping to have the Round the Bays, 30,000 people in Auckland, New Zealand, that was cancelled with 24 hours notice, and a couple of others, a cycling event and probably a triathlon event. And then the week after, a really interesting one, Paolo, the medical director, I've got your title wrong, Paolo, sorry, from World Athletics, and the IIRM team, Dr. Chris Troianos. We've got a wonderful team that's coming and talking about medical implications of coming back to events, bringing events back sensibly. That's on the 22nd of March, and they happen every fortnight, and they're free. If you can't find the details on LinkedIn, Facebook, or wherever, send me an email directly, chris@chrisrob.asia. Oliver, if you wouldn't mind popping that in the chat. And that's all from me, Chris Robb, CEO and founder of Mass Participation World. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to our panelists, many and diverse, and my great pleasure to say a big thank you to Alessio and to hand the final say over to him. Here you go. Take it away, please, Alessio.
Chris, thank you. And I strongly hope that we soon run out of cases like those of Riga and Auckland that you just described. I hope that we are no longer in a position of having to cancel events with 15 minutes to go. It's been a terrific afternoon for me, morning for the very many of our guests today joining from the USA. There was a lot of stuff in there, and I'm really thankful to all panelists for sharing their wealth of knowledge with us. A few messages from me from World Athletics. The first one is that, as you surely noticed, also this webinar was on the theme of optimism, because at World Athletics, we really believe that there can never be, this is an ideal time to be in this business. Once the pandemic will be under control, due to the fact that people will want to travel and due to the new emphasis that governments everywhere will be already putting on health, if we as an industry manage to properly articulate what we can bring to communities, what we can bring to society at large, we will be in a very nice spot. At World Athletics, we are more than happy to help you reach these goals in whatever way we can help. Another thing that I would like to share is that our doors are always open. We hope that through activities such as these webinars that is showing our contacts are always public. So make sure to reach out to World Athletics for any assistance. In this vein, I would like to share with you a link to an interesting project that has just been launched last week. That is the Global Conversation. For the first time in the World Athletics history, and I'm going to share the link now. For the first time in the World Athletics history, the organization is reaching out not only to member federations, but to literally everyone who has a stake and interest in the sport of athletics as an athlete, as a coach, as a federation official, as an event organizer, but even just as a fan, really, to get their views on what the future of the sport should be. So please, 10 minutes of your time, check out that link and give us your thoughts on what you think the future of the sport should be. Final piece from me, at the end of April, beginning of May, we're looking to have another webinar, this time on virtual and digital running. Hopefully, we will also be in a position to present some other exciting World Championships, new revamped World Championships that, together with Jakob and Mark, we are working on. And then probably later in the spring, we will have one on inclusion and disability sports in road races and mass participation events. We hope you enjoyed the session. I certainly did. Thank you, Chris, and all the panelists. And if you celebrate Easter, enjoy the Easter break. If not, see you in a month's time. Thank you.